Janelle, we got Whitney on the line. What do you want to ask her?
Is there any one moment or experience you had to manage your way through that you think pushed you to grow the most? And how did it influence your thinking or change your approach to how you do business?
I've had a lot of ups and downs. I think you just naturally, have that the longer you're in real estate investing. But the first time you get handed a stack of cards that are really kind of soured, it's hard. So for me, I remember that the first tenant eviction I had to do, it was traumatic for me, to be really honest. It was traumatic. But after that, then you kind of you understand the process, you understand, okay, that there's a system, there's a timeline that this all works through. And that mindset becomes translatable to other things that might happen in your portfolio. It's remembering that it's all about relationships and remaining human.
I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different than everything else out there. I bring together a new and an experienced investor on each episode, and I let the aspiring investor ask the questions that they need answered. So if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably will have the exact same questions. Now, before we get to this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and that little bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. Very excited for today's show. We got two amazing women on the line today with us. And I love it when I can say we have two amazing women on the line because there's just not enough women in the apartment investing space. So it's great to have, like I said, two amazing women. We got Jennel Mills and Whitney Elkins-Hutten on the line. So ladies, welcome.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
And all the listeners know, first thing we do is we bring our experienced investor in the hot seat. So Whitney, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
an amazing Tuesday. The sun's shining. It's spring.
Does it actually look like it's spring where you're at? I mean, you're Colorado, other side of the mountains from me.
It is. It is
Okay.
72 degrees outside. It is blissful.
Oh, making me jealous. It is. So for people listening, it's April 18th as we record this. This will actually release later this week. So yesterday, I think it hit 65. Today, I saw snow on my windshield as I was coming home from lunch. So yay, spring. Anyway, we're not here to talk about the weather. So Whitney, do us a favor. Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, I am the director of investor education here at passiveinvesting.com. We focus on multifamily, self-storage, express car washes, and first position lien real estate debt. That's what I do professionally. Personally, I am an avid real estate investor and passive investor. My husband and I, over the course, several years, but I've been in real estate investing since 2002. We've acquired a portfolio valued over $800 million. We have 6,300 residential units, 2,200 self-storage units, car washes, partridge in a pear tree, right? We've got it all. But I started off completely by accident, living, flipping, and house hacking, and grew my portfolio and my skills from there. But really realized that what I was after in life were the 5 freedoms: time freedom, financial freedom, freedom of choice, impact, and location.
Yep.
And it's really difficult to get those all whenever you're actively investing.
Yeah, it is. It is. So awesome. So when did you start with passive investing? Is the company passiveinvesting.com or just passive investing?
Passiveinvesting.com.
Okay.
If we're going to full title, but
Yeah.
don't want to confuse it with generally passive investing.
I know, right?
Yeah, I mean, I started here full time in November 2021, but previously was working with a different private equity group that partnered with passive investing on their deals. So I've been working with the founders, Dan Hanford, Danny Randazzo, since nearly the beginning in 2018. So I'm very familiar with the team and have a good relationship here.
Awesome. And it is an amazing team. Lots of good stuff going on. So you guys put out a lot of stuff. I see some of the products. I mean, the MFIN conference coming up in a couple months, which I hear those are really off the hook. But you guys are doing it over a birthday in my house, so I'm gonna not go. I'm sorry, but anyway, lots of good stuff coming out from the passiveinvesting.com guys. So let's talk about kind of like your journey into real estate. If you can talk about, how your journey started, just go into a little more detail about, how it progressed. I think you said 2002 is when you started, but just go into a little more detail along that journey, how it's progressed, and take us up to now.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2002, I purchased a house with a significant other. About a month later, the relationship fell apart. Everything was under my name. I was the one with the full-time gig and qualified for it. But the house needed a dire need of a rehab. And so that was kind of the partnership. I was going to qualify for the house, and then my significant other was going to rehab it. Well, when the relationship fell apart, everything fell to me to figure out how to take care of. And I slightly panicked. I stuffed the house full of roommates, and I'm like, okay, hopefully they don't mind living in a construction zone, and bought the Home Depot 1-2-3 book, because guys, this is 2002. YouTube didn't exist back then.
Right.
We didn't have video. We didn't have the wealth of information that we do on the internet these days.
So you went to this thing called a bookstore?
Oh, I went to a hardware store that sold like 2 books. One of it.
Okay. Wow.
So yeah, from a book, I learned how. I still have the book too. It's still an amazing resource. But long story short, I taught myself how to do a lot of things on that property, some of which I shouldn't have been doing. I should never have done my own plumbing or electrical. But fast forward 11 months later, and trust me, I did have to hire a plumber to come fix my errors. I sold the property, and I made $52,000 upon sale, tax-free because of the 121 exclusion, because I had to move for my job. And I had full intention in keeping the house, but because I had to move for my job, I got to check that box. And I'm like, wait a second, I made more money with this house than I did at my day job that had me traveling 80 hours a week. And I hadn't been paying for any of my housing expense because I had roommates. And so I was totally bitten by the real estate bug. Did a few more live and flip projects on my own. My husband joined me in a few projects. And then it hit us one day. We still had golden handcuffs. Even if we flipped full time, we still had golden handcuffs. We were it wasn't our job. It was to a house now. And so we were like, how do people get financial freedom investing? Like it's happening. People are doing it, but we couldn't put a name to it that we needed cash flow. And then eventually a friend of ours said, you know what? You should put a tenant in that property. And I'm like, oh yeah, awesome. So but started flipping to ourselves, which is now known as the BRRRR strategy: buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat.
Yep. So you made that up, right?
Totally did not.
Yeah.
I mean, the BRRRR strategy has been along for.
It just hasn't been called BRRRR since I think Bigger Pockets made that popular. But yeah, I mean, people have been doing that for years, and somebody just called it the BRRRR, and now it's what everyone calls it.
Right. Yeah. It's, marketing. Right. But we were flipping to ourselves essentially and taking our capital out of projects and scaled to about 30 single family units. And then I wanted to step back and spend more time with my family. And I had a little baby girl at home. I was guarding over my 2 grandparents. My mom was ailing. And I was like, let's start taking advantage of some of this cash flow we have coming in so I can be home with the people that need me the most. And my husband was like, that's amazing. I want that too. And I'm like, nope, we didn't plan for that. We need to still work. And so we were like, okay, how can we do this? And we realized we needed to go bigger deals. And so we got into apartment investing. But then at this point in time, we had already started passively investing, but I had just thought of it as like a bond in my IRA account. I didn't think much of it. So as I'm making this transition into active multifamily real estate, I was like, who do I know that's doing this? I'm investing with these operators over here in my retirement account. Let me go look at what they're doing and see if I can copy it. Right? Let me get paid for my education. And then I realized I'm not getting paid that differently at the end of the day than I was here passively. So long story short, we decided to use our current investments that we had at the time to divert as much as we could to investing in other people's projects, while I went into partnership on the general partner side to learn that space. And then after a couple of years of experiment, I should say, we were going to figure out, okay, which strategy wins.
I love it. And I love how you guys thought about, what do we need to do to make this work better? Go bigger. I think that's where a lot of people get kind of wrapped up, and, it takes a lot of courage to do that and to say that and to actually pursue it. And you've gone pretty big since. So congratulations on that. But
Thank you.
What I'd like to do is pick one deal, that your first or your favorite or your most recent, whichever one you want to talk about, and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, let's narrow that down. Which deal do we want to talk about?
Yeah, whichever one you want to talk about, really. What's that? Yeah, multifamily. Yeah, let's do multifamily.
So when I went into partnership, I had two other partners. They were the majority partners. I was the minority partner. It was, their business, but I was bringing an immense amount of value to the business, not just in money, but in director of investor relations, also the operations of the company. And, one of the deals that we had several that we had to push across the finish line. But, one of the deals, I think, when people think about syndicating, they don't really understand what is it the general partnership actually does, right? They're just like, great, they're finding a property, they're closing it, they're placing it with property management, and what value do they actually bring to the
I
deal?
wish that was all we did.
Right?
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah. So for this particular deal, it was navigating. I don't have the specifics pulled up in front of me, but for my role in the deal, our group is bringing all the capital. And so it was, by the time we got the deal under contract, it was July 5th. Most of our group was on vacation. So when everybody else is on a vacation, guess who do you think, what team is just working their knuckles to the bone to get this deal put out to the investors? Now, our marketing and my other two partners, they did an amazing job putting together the offering deck. I'm on the back end trying to figure out, at the same time, trying to put together, transition us to an investor portal. It was like the worst time to bring this deal on, but it was the most amazing deal to bring on during this time. And so for this particular deal, and then also navigating two other co-sponsors in the deal, putting together all the legal documentation, making sure all the legal documentation is correct, getting it out to investors, getting investors in over July 4th. Nobody's looking at their email. And getting that capital in within 2 weeks. Before that, we had only raised about $4 million in about a 5-week time period. We did 17 million in 2.5 weeks.
Nice.
So, and that is, that is notwithstanding the other two partners partnering with the other two general partners to get everything through due diligence, compliance. You have to do blue sky registration. You have to do all these things, especially whenever you're raising money. So
speaking of holiday closings, I did like 3 December closings, 3 years in a row, did December closings. And, last year somebody asked me to partner with them on a deal that was going to close in December. And fortunately, I can turn stuff like that down. It's just like, a couple of years ago, if it was my first or second deal, I'd have been like all for it. But now I'm just like, you know what? I don't want to spend December trying to, raise $1 million or $2 million or whatever. I'll just pass. Yeah.
I've had a December closing as well. And, again, this was years ago. And it was quite frankly the slowest raise that I had ever done in my whole entire life. Once we got that thing, it took 6 weeks to get it across the finish line. It was hot pokers under the fingernails the whole step of the way. And then you're right into the spring season. You don't even get a time to rest.
I gotta sit back and start looking at the calendar and figure out what the best time to raise money is, and then plan. Most of my deals, or actually take the worst time to raise money off the calendar. I think that's December and July probably, but and try to raise money outside of those times. But cool. Well, I know we're on a time crunch, but so I'm going to ask you a question that I love to ask everybody. And what is your why?
This is a question that I help clients navigate through, coaching clients, mentoring clients. But for me, it boils down to one of 5 things: financial freedom, time freedom, freedom of choice, location, and impact, really. But you start higher level when you ask yourself why. So initially, when I got into real estate, it was all about, I wanted to be able to pay my bills off and take my family on vacation. And then as you kick the goalpost down the road, it's not that the why changes, is that you go deeper into what your why truly is. And so, if you asked me 2 years ago, it was financial freedom. A year and a half ago, it was time freedom. And now really my why is, since I've started taking some of those other whys off my list, it's really how can I create an impact and help people understand that if you take control of your financial future, investing in real estate or not, it does not matter. If you take control, not just educating yourself, but putting your planning into action, taking full control, we can really solve the financial crisis in the United States and quite frankly across the world. Because I firmly believe the lack of financial education and the action on it is a public health crisis.
Yeah, it's one of those things that nobody's taught, and the people who teach the financial education are typically the people who control the finances. Like, I think the big investment companies have really kind of dominated the financial education market, and they're peddling their own products, is what it is. It's, here's why you should invest in this. And oh, by the way, we sell this, but anyway, that's a completely different subject. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. And I like what you said about your why. Your why doesn't really change, but kind of how in my case, it was the same thing. My first why that I publicized and talked about a lot was trying to get out of my W-2. The why wasn't to get out of the W-2. The why was to be able to spend time with my family, to spend time with the people that I love. It falls into one of your 5 freedoms, but that was my why. And that's still my why. It's just that now I'm out of my W-2. I'm working as a full-time investor, but now it just, it's expressed differently, I guess, the best way to say it.
Where, for me, where again, you kind of dig deeper, right? Every year I sit with the same set of questions.
Yep.
And I learn more about myself. And, now I'm thinking more in terms of impact, but, the impact starts at home with my family and my daughter.
Yeah.
Right. What can I do for them, education wise, support wise, care wise, because quite frankly, if I can invest the amount of energy into myself that I, that I do into myself, into my child, who knows what she's going to be able to do and how many people she's going to impact later on.
Yep. That's definitely the biggest impact there is in your house. So, all right. Well, let's shift gears and bring Jennel on. So Jennel, welcome. How's it going?
Thank you. It's going well.
Awesome. Well, tell us about yourself, please.
I spent the last 15 years in commercial real estate, specifically as a property manager. And my specialty was Class A high-rise office buildings. As a property manager, you have your hands in everything. One minute you're managing finances, the next you're tenant relations, and the next you're explaining why you have to spend money on a major mechanical repair to building ownership, and the list goes on. So I was also involved on the property management side with several sales and purchases and repositions. So I gained a lot of really great real estate experience over those years. I worked my way up the corporate ladder, and I was getting more responsibility and harder projects. But with that, my job was taking more and more of my time. So finally, one day I had the realization that I needed to go after my dreams, kind of now or never. And I know I can work hard. I know I can be very resourceful. So why not do that for myself? I love real estate. There's never a dull moment in the managing or selling or buying of real estate. Something crazy always comes up, and that's my favorite part of the job. So investing, I feel like, is the natural next step for me.
Awesome. And same question you get, follow-up question you get. What's your why?
Yeah, this is funny. I try to keep it written down and kind of near me at all times, and everything you were both just discussing, this lines up so well. So my why can be summed up as wanting to have a positive impact on those around me. And I want to do that by owning more of my time. From a personal standpoint, time is our most precious commodity. And I have young kids. Of course, I want to be there for them as much as possible. But also, ultimately, one of our goals as a family is to be very generous with not just our finances, but our time. And my business why I actually wrote down is that I want to help others learn about this investment strategy. The way I grew up, and I know many people are in the same boat, like money was on that short list of topics you don't really talk about. So I spent a good chunk of my adult life knowing that the W-2 and the 401k until you're 65, that strategy was not going to get me where I wanted to be. But I didn't necessarily know what else to do. So I want to help others avoid that lost feeling and learn to make their money work for them.
Awesome. Appreciate you for sharing that. Now we come to my favorite part of the podcast. Jennel, we got Whitney on the line. What do you want to ask her?
Yes. Whitney, thank you for your time today. I'm so thankful for the opportunity to get to ask you these questions. The first one is, it's exciting that you've been involved in so many different types of investments, from single family to multifamily to storage and car washes. Which one is your favorite and why?
Depends on the time in the market. I'll be perfectly honest. For me, my mindset is public health. So I'm really trying to I think you're going to be the closest impact on people's lives with multifamily real estate. I would love to think that I can do all of that type of investing, impact type of investing through my portfolio. But for me, I have to remember my impact is created outside of my portfolio. My portfolio allows me to create that impact. And so that means I have to look at what the market is giving me at a particular point in time. So I think right now in this market cycle, I think multifamily is properly structured multifamily deal could be still a really great investment. I still believe in the asset class, but where we're at in the market cycle, for me, my goals, I'm still looking at, cash yield, equity growth, tax benefits, kind of a balanced blend of all of that. I personally really like self-storage and express car washes. Yeah. And so for me, when I look at my portfolio, I'm looking at what's my core going to be built of that somebody always needs. Somebody always needs a roof over their head. And then I expand out for there of like, what are people going to engage in next that they aren't going to give up very easily, that are going to be really sticky. Americans love their things and they love their cars.
Yeah, I just bought a car wash subscription yesterday. So yeah, somebody on the other end is making a little more cash flow because I want a clean car. Yeah.
There's all different reasons why that works, but this is not a car wash.
Yeah, I mean,
a really sticky asset class.
Yeah. So
my next question is there any one moment or experience you had to manage your way through that you think pushed you to grow the most? And how did it influence your thinking or change your approach to how you do business?
I've had a lot of ups and downs. I think you just naturally, have that the longer you're in real estate investing. But the first time you get handed a stack of cards that are really kind of soured, it's hard. So for me, like I remember that the first tenant eviction I had to do, it was traumatic for me, to be really honest. It was traumatic. But after that, then you kind of you understand the process, you understand, okay, that there's a system, there's a timeline that this all works through. And that mindset becomes translatable to other things that might happen in your portfolio. Now, one experience that came up for me during COVID, I just couldn't wrap my head around. And we got into an eviction situation with a single family investor. They had been with me since the very beginning of my portfolio, like 6-7 years. And long story short, it was a married couple. They weren't paying, something started happening with them not being able to pay rent. I think the wife went into the hospital for COVID. She eventually passes away. And then the next month, the husband goes in for COVID. And then we just don't get rent. My property manager just hands tied, doesn't know what to do, can't evict him, doesn't think that we're going to get any sort of judgment with the courts. And I'm like, are they even alive? That's the first thing I want to know. Yeah. And I'm on the phone with my property manager. We're trying to discuss a plan. And I just Googled the tenant's name, and he had passed away 3 weeks beforehand. Not on the property, but his daughters had been squatting in the property because they had gotten kicked out of their home. And so then it's just so it's situations like that where you're trying to balance out being a human, but also be, you're not running a free business either. And just trying to, come up with a solution that works for everybody to get everybody, into, really good situations. For me, those are the situations that are the most tenuous to deal with, especially with people that you've had a longstanding relationship with. It's remembering that it's all about relationships and remaining human.
Yeah.
That can be a hard line to walk. You have to run it like a business, but end of the day, we all are humans, and that's a interesting example there. I love it. Thank you for sharing.
What do you think distinguishes successful syndicators from those that aren't successful yet?
I love the word that you put at the end of that sentence, yet. Right? So that means that the mindset is there, that they're going to figure out how can they get it done. Not that I'm going to bail at some point in time. So keep that word at the end of all sentences. Like, I don't know how to do this yet. Right. Yeah. So I think, successful, being a successful syndicator comes down to, first three things. People have to know you, they have to love you or like you, and they have to really trust you. So that is the top of the pyramid. And if you can nail those three things and stay true to yourself, true to your values, honest, transparent, authentic, and get that message out there, I think those people are, leaps and bounds above the rest. Because there are a lot of bad operators out there too that or using all the kind of the marketing tips and tricks and hacks, right? But they're not authentic. They're not transparent. They're not trustworthy. So know, like, and trust, that's the top of the triangle. And it's very strong communications. And sometimes that means communicating not so cool news to your investors, especially through, challenging times. And it doesn't have to be COVID or a recession. It can be, hurricanes, a tree falling on the property, a fire, what's happening, or maybe just you're not leasing up nearly as fast as you thought you were. So being communicating consistently, persistently, and in that communication, telling people how you're going to fix the issue. So remaining proactive and not burying your head in the sand.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're seeing a lot, and I think we'll see more of that over the next year, or groups that don't know how to handle that adversity, which just honestly leaves, an opportunity for people who do know how to, navigate those environments.
Yeah. And Jennel, if I can answer your question with one word, I would say commitment. What's the difference between someone who's successful and not? Somebody actually asked me that question last week. They had like the Joe Fairless book with them, and the Joe Fairless book starts out, and I don't think I read it from cover to cover. I kind of poke in what I need at the time, but it starts out, ranking yourself on the scale of 1 to 10. How ready are you? I don't think that matters. I don't think it matters if you start out with a 1 or if you start out with a 10. I think the person who is fully committed that starts out as a 1 on the scale of readiness is going to get there faster than the person who's a 9 or a 10 that just, is kind of not as committed. So I think really the answer is commitment. And I mean, Whitney, know, light, and trust. Everything she said is good. I'm not trying to trump her or anything, but just different perspective on that. Absolutely know, like, trust, communicate are tenets of being a great operator. But I think it's commitment on that one. Just commit to a path and keep on pushing.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to sum up what I was trying to get at with the sentiment when you had yet at the end of the question, because so many people phrase that question, what success, what separates successful people and the people who aren't.
Yeah.
But you said yet, which means that person who is still thinking in that mindset yet is going to get there eventually, because they're going to figure it out. Right. So you actually ask, like, how do I be successful now or successful in 2 years?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. As opposed to like successful and not successful. So
I liked what you said about communication too, because I think I definitely, like, early in my career, I would try to handle problems and, have everything fixed before I let the asset manager know sometimes, like, what was going on. And then I figured out, like, as time went on, that if I, reach out to them sooner, it usually went better. So
yeah.
Yeah. And with a plan, right? A plan in place. People are like, okay, they got me.
Yep.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. We always had a saying that I like: bad news doesn't get better with age. It's just one of those things. It's better to communicate it early than it is to wait, and like, oh, hey, yeah, 3 months ago we had this big fire and now you're not going to get your check. Doesn't work.
Well, I actually am a passive investor in a couple of assets, and it is night and day between the two operators and the way they're handling it and the way they're communicating, like night and day. And the one that, that is not handling it very well, he's getting slapped with lawsuits, and he's just getting raked over the coals. And not to say that the other operator is completely out of hot water, but he's endeared people to be on their side, right? And they're working towards a solution together, whereas the other person has created a set of circumstances. Now they're battling, they got a war in 2 fronts essentially, and that's just going to carry forward in their business.
All right, Jennel, we got time for one more question, so hit us with your best shot.
It's an easy one, just something I love to ask everyone. What's your favorite book you've read that helped you out in this business?
The one thing is probably a book that I read every single year, and every time I read it, I just get more and more from it. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And so for anybody who's just read it once and then you think, I got it, I understand prioritization, time blocking, check. No, read it again, because that's not what it's all about. Would you agree, Brian?
Yeah, I'd say it's about focusing. is my
Mhm.
opinion. It's about focusing. Yeah, it's not time blocking. Yeah, it's focusing.
That's the tactic, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's one book that I really appreciate. And then for me, a second book, just to follow that up, is, especially if people are kind of carrying baggage into their business, there's another book out there by Mastin Kep. He's like a Tony Robbins follower, but he comes at it from a trauma approach, like a psychology approach, and it's called Claim Your Power. And so it's really interesting. Just you kind of realize, oh, I am a product of my parents, my family, my teachers, and I've got to unlearn so much more than I ever thought that I needed to unlearn in order for me to progress to where I want to go.
I'd say for me, and this is one that I've gone all in on, is anything by Gino Wickman, really. But the book Traction was the first one. I read How to Be a Good Boss. I read the just finished Rocket Fuel this week, also with Gino Wickman. And I signed up for like the EOS coaching as well. So I think that series is really going to be really, really big. So yeah, that's it for me.
Can I make one more suggestion? There's a book by Larry Yatch, actually. So for those people who love the SEAL Team Leader publications, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, there's another SEAL Team Leader, Larry Yatch, and he wrote a book called How Leadership Actually Works. And when I read that book, I've been in leadership and development and professionally for years, and I was like, oh my gosh, it is simple. Not easy, but simple. So that might be another good book to throw into the arsenal.
Awesome. Well, now we're out of time. And one question for each of you to finish it up. Whitney, go first. How can listeners learn more about you?
Yes. You can find me at a subpage on the passiveinvesting.com website, and it's passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. And there I've got a free ebook, weekly webinar, boot camps that I do for everybody. And we can also hop on the phone and do a one-on-one call.
And you have a podcast too.
Yeah, I have 3.
3 podcasts.
Yeah. So one of which is mine, the other 2 are mine, and one that I do. But yeah, the Multifamily Investor Nation, I just recently had Brian on that.
Yeah.
And then also I have the Passive Investing Made Simple podcast, and then I do my own like little educational show at ashwealth.com.
Oh, wow. 3 podcasts. I need to step up my game. All right. No, I'm teasing. Not a competition. And Jennel, same question for you. How can listeners learn more about you?
I have a business LinkedIn and Facebook page. It's cgpcapitalpartners.com. That stands for Connection, Generosity, and Personal Growth. I will warn you that my social media game is a little sad so far. So I need to get better about posting on those, but would love to connect just on LinkedIn and Facebook. My personal page as well. My first name is spelled Jennel, and would love to just encourage other people, find accountability partners, or if you need any boots on the ground in North Carolina, I'd love to do that for you too.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for being on the show today. Very much appreciate you guys' time, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for hosting us, Brian.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure to subscribe. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community yet, which we call the Tribe of Titans, you are missing out. Get 30 days free by clicking the link in the description to this episode, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.